So hello, everyone. We will give some folks a chance to join us here on our line. I do see some folks coming on now, so we can go ahead and get started. So my name is Fawn Walker Montgomery. I'm sure y'all know that by now if you watch our lives live or if you come back to watch them. But my name is Fawn Walker Montgomery, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Take Action Advocacy Group, or TAG, as we affectionately call it. We formerly known as Take Action Mon Valley, or TAMV, which is still the name of our chapter here for Allegheny County. So when we do our podcast, which we call Voices of Liberation, we typically start out with just an overview of TAG. And here we are, what we do. So we're really excited this year because this is our 10-year anniversary, 10 years. So we started in 2014 as a community group of folks who gave a damn about what was going on in their community. So we started to have some meetings, and our initial focus was around homicides not being solved for Black and Brown people in Allegheny County. So it was really focused a lot about street violence. And around 2017, we kind of pivoted to focus more on social justice and Black liberation. And that was really because we started to do a lot of research and policy reports, and we seen that the direct link to racism and structural and systemic racism, all that, was literally white supremacy. So that's why we kind of shifted to do more social justice and Black liberation work. And then we became a 501c3 in 2020. So what we do, how we take action, we have a complaint program where people can call in and get help with any social justice issues they may be experiencing, whether that be police violence, school issues, discrimination at work, or in our community. We also have wellness sessions, which are going to be live this month. People can sign up. We do yoga there, meditation. They're specifically for Black people presently, and we're starting out with Black women. So those are on the website as well, and you can sign up for those. We support several advocacy issues that affect Black people specifically. One that we're really working on now is environmental justice, and we have a Get Out the Lead McKeesport campaign. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but you can sign up for that on our website as well if you just want to be involved. If you're not a resident of McKeesport, there's other ways for you to be involved as well, you as an individual or your organization. We do the podcast here, and we also have blogs on our website. We use those as storytelling as well to really kind of amplify the voice of Black people, specifically the ones that we're working with in our complaint program, because a lot of times those will turn into full-blown advocacy campaigns. And we also do training and consulting as well. And we do chapters. So Take Action Mon Valley is the name of our chapter for Allegheny County. And then we have a youth chapter as well. So that's a little bit about TAG. And like I said, I'm the CEO and co-founder. So thank you for joining us today. I am going to welcome on our first guest. This is Justine from Penn State University. So Justine is coming on to talk about some listening sessions that we did. So last year, we started to do some listening sessions on food insecurity. And we were contacted by Eric Yule, who formerly was employed by Penn State or Greater Allegheny. So he reached out to do some listening sessions on food insecurity. We agreed to do those because we recognize that when it comes to policy change and systemic change, a lot of people move based on reports, based upon data. Now we know what we go through, so we don't have to continuously say that. But however, in order for some people to move the needle, some people need reports, they need data. And in addition, excuse me, one thing that we were noticing is that there is not a lot of data about the Mon Valley or other small communities where Black people reside. So we thought this was a good thing to do. So we did the listening sessions, and Justine and her colleagues at Penn State agreed to work on a report with us. We thanked them for that. because we really wanted to have something to give back to the community, like a community report out. This is what we found. This is what we do for information, and then it'll be on our website if anyone wants to use it as well. So without further ado, I want to welcome Justine Lindeman from Penn State University.
Thanks, Fawn. It's really nice to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show today to speak with us. And do you want me to call you doctor?
Oh, just call me Justine.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So before we start, can you just tell us a little bit about, because I know a lot of this was your brainchild. You've really been working on. So what kind of led you to the work on like food insecurity, and what led you to the Mon Valley?
Sure. So yeah, I have been working on food access and food sovereignty, and specifically looking at Black food sovereignty in the city, in various cities for, I guess, over 10 years now. And I'm specifically concerned with how cities develop and who gets to make decisions about things like land use and development. So very often development decisions are made based on this doctrine of highest and best use. And that assumes that the best use for land is the most profitable use. And so this approach doesn't take into consideration people's lived experiences, so community members and what would be best for their health or their well-being. And it certainly doesn't take into consideration long histories of racism, segregation, redlining, and other kind of historical and ongoing practices that have disproportionately impacted Black and Brown communities. So when you look at this doctrine of highest and best use, it's really looking at real estate development and what can bring in the most profit from taxes or from business development into a place. So in cities in particular, my work has always pointed to the role that residents could and should play in making decisions over what does and doesn't belong in the city. So in their communities, in their neighborhoods, and as far as I'm concerned, this includes the food environment. So whether that's growing food in city lots or having access to adequate, affordable, appropriate foods at food retail outlets, or developing, having access to the resources in the city to develop their own food entrepreneurial establishments. To me, a city is really, it stems from the people who live there, and it shouldn't be developed from these concerns about how can we bring money into the city. It should be developed for the people and by and with the people who already live there. So I've done research and worked with community residents in a few different places, sort of looking at a lot of these different issues about development and land use and the food environment. So I've worked in Syracuse, New York. That's where I grew up. I've worked in Cleveland, Ohio, I lived there for about 4 years. And then when I moved to Pennsylvania about 5 years ago, I met some people, including Eric Ewell, that worked at Penn State Greater Allegheny and are incredibly invested in the communities where they live and work. So Eric has been hugely important in shaping this work. And when we met, we began to talk about the different ways that folks have been accessing food and how they might access food in places like Duquesne, Clairton, and McKeesport. And the way that I work, I operate from a place where I don't presume to know what people's experiences are or what the solutions to any given challenge might be. So we decided that we should host a series of listening sessions, like Fawn was saying, with community residents across these 3 communities, Duquesne, Clairton, and McKeesport, just to learn more about how people are experiencing these histories of structural racism that impact access to food, histories of segregation and redlining that impact access to food. So we hosted a total of 10 listening sessions. 2 that we co-hosted and co-facilitated with Pittsburghers for Public Transit, to learn about residents' lived experiences with food insecurity, how people access food, what are the challenges that they are experiencing, and what are the kind of, and I'll hopefully talk about this a little bit more, but what are some of the interconnected issues with food, which is why we worked with PPT, because we know that transportation is crucial to accessing food. So in addition to talking about the challenges, what's more important that we were more interested in, we are interested to talk about what kinds of alternative futures people would like to see in their communities. And that's one of the things that I'm most interested in all of the work that I do, not just sort of highlighting and locating what a challenge or what a problem might be, But what are the alternative futures that people would like to see, and what is the pathway to get there? So in talking about alternative futures, you begin to sort of carve out that pathway. Um, and, I think, again, talking about what brought me to do this research and what brought me to working in the Mon Valley, I think that access to food and access to land, these are both central to liberation. So we can't talk about liberation. We can't talk about, you know, pathways to freedom in the future without talking about access to food and land. So these discussions about building alternative futures, they also begin to create this roadmap towards that liberated future. And that's, I think, kind of the medium-sized version of what brought me to this.
No, thank you for that. That is very true when you talk about liberation, because it's like we can't even get the basics.
Right.
We're just talking about clean air, clean water, access to food, access to transportation. And those things are typically under-resourced in small communities of color,
Mhm.
not just here in Allegheny County, but everywhere that we've been or that, we do work in. Typically the smaller areas where you have higher concentration of communities of color, they're under-resourced with food, with transportation, education, just overall economic development. And some of these towns are ran down. Some of them are ran like sheriffs. The police departments act like sheriffs. So there's all these little issues that I always like to say there's so many isms. All
Mhm.
your isms will be rooted and live in these smaller communities. So what aspect about doing this particular project was rewarding for you?
So many aspects. But I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about this question of being under-resourced because I think that, we kind of assume that, oh, well, if there's people that are living there, then the resources will be there. But I think that assumption fails to fails to really grasp like how our current economic system only operates from a profit motive. And so if a place, for example, there's a couple of neighborhoods where I've been working in Cleveland,
Mhm.
and there are plenty of people that live there, but these are people who are low income, maybe they live in public housing, maybe they are older folks and they're retired or they're younger and so they don't work. So, you don't have a whole lot of money circulating in these communities. And so when it comes to that, the grocery stores are leaving because, oh, well, we can't make profit here. And new grocery stores won't locate there because, well, where's the profit in that? And so you're operating from this kind of capitalist perspective that completely neglects the the rights that people have to access food, the rights that people have to access things like education and transportation and healthcare. And so, underlying this question of under-resourced, to me, it's not just about, oh, well, we need to find more resources. To me, that means we need to completely reorient the way that we think about resources and building communities and development to move away from this profit motive, to move towards a place where we're thinking about, well, how can we promote well-being and how can we promote, people's right to food? How can we promote people's, right to a quality of life without saying, well, somebody's got to be making money off of that.
Mhm.
And that's my rant, and I'll step down off my.
No, that's so true in regards to capitalism
Yeah,
and how it affects our thinking and how it affects
yeah.
our way of life. I always say to people when they, oh, phone at me, talking about what the community needs. Well, I'm one person. You have to talk to the entire
Mhm,
community. And a lot of times we just need, hell, we need resources. A
right.
lot of times people conceptualize that as them showing up
Mhm,
in our communities and them doing it for us or doing it with us. I'm like, no, if you have access to grants, give us the grant. We'll do it.
mhm,
Most of the people in these smaller communities doing that grassroots work are not connected to any organization. They just care and they're doing it out of necessity because they have to live there. So can you be a fiscal sponsor for them? Can you
mhm,
hire them? If you want to come over here, and this is my rant at the end, I'm always saying, if you're going to come over here, hire us.
right.
Give our organizations the grants because we actually live here. We actually know what's going on. So people do have to think differently about how do you resource the community?
Well, and that's one thing that if folks look at the report that they'll read about is that, even when grocery stores do locate in these communities, they don't tend to hire local. They don't tend to hire the folks that are living in the communities. And whether that stems from a place of overt racism or implicit racism that they're not even aware of, they're offering those jobs to other people. Or they won't locate in a particular community, and so they're not even bringing the resources into there. But kind of drawing upon something you just said, I think one of the most rewarding parts of this work is you realize in listening to people talk that there are so many resources, excuse me, already in these places. People have deep knowledge about not only what the issues are that they are facing, but what the solutions could be. People have knowledge about growing their own food and they want to share that knowledge. People have knowledge about running businesses, being entrepreneurial. And I think, one of the major, one of the things that I really enjoyed when I was sort of digging into the data and looking at all the transcripts and rereading things, was just how eager people are to build strong networks of connection and solidarity within and amongst each other, because folks realize that they have what it takes to build their communities and to build the kind of community that they want to live in. And so it's just there was even one guy in McKeesport who we were talking in a big circle, and he said something about how, this, like, the politics of it are right here. Like, we are the sort of political launching pad for this movement, and or could be. And those weren't his words exactly, but he was basically saying, like, it starts here with these conversations, and this is where it can start to change things. We need to be able to come together, bring our ideas together, and then work towards enacting that change. And that's not to say that it's as easy as, having a conversation then going out and changing things, but that it starts there, and that, these seeds are planted and people are excited about it and they want to work together and they want to make a difference. They want to build, more vibrant communities that they're excited to live in, that they want to raise their kids in, that where the sort of not just the bare minimum, but where the resources are there, the amenities are there, so that they can thrive. And so that's exciting to me and rewarding, to hear people talking about their own communities and talking about building something collectively, co-creating something, within the community.
Absolutely. That was very rewarding for me as well. Actually, hearing from the people that they were kind of
Mm-hmm.
ready to organize around the issue. That definitely made me feel good as well. One of the things that was a real big takeaway for me, a highlight and a takeaway, was that the people knew about the political issues. So they
Mm-hmm.
stood and they said, no, we understand that a lot of reasons why we're not getting some of these resources is the politics and the pettiness and some of the inner fighting and how that affects us. So I'm sharing my screen now, and then we'll put this link here in the chat. So you can go to our website, and at the top, it says there's a link to the food apartheid report. So we're not calling it food insecurity report because this is literally a food apartheid. Over here in the Mon Valley, one of our communities, one or two of us have grocery stores. And then there's the transportation issues. So I'm sharing my screen now, and you can either download it here or you can just click the button here and it'll go to the table of contents. And then it just highlights some of the sections that we looked at. So another highlight of mine was the racism piece, because they pointed that out as well when they specifically understood how racism affected our access to being able to have access to food, transportation to get the food, even the gardens and having access to be able to, have your own garden.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things are, I would say, really big highlights and takeaways for me. They said, no, we know. We know what goes on in each community and how that stops things and affects us. And the violence as well, the community violence that surrounds us daily. They brought that up as well in regards to food access. So I don't know if people can see this, but when we kind of looked at certain areas. We looked at the declining infrastructure over time, community connections, community safety, systems of injustice, examining economic and policy factors, promoting dignity in the food system, and improving transportation, and trusting government and political figures. So this came from us talking to the people and listening to them at the listening sessions. We should be surprised. Some folks really don't listen to people at these listening sessions. But we took what they said to us and broke that down for the themes. So I think I kind of pointed out the themes that stood out to me a lot in
Mhm.
regards to the racism and the politics. Is there any themes that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the ones you mentioned. And I think more than just the individual themes, to
Mhm.
me, like just the interconnectedness of it all. Like as I sat down to begin writing that report, it was almost like, where do I even start? What's the entry point? Because um, it was all sort of wrapped up together. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important to talk about food, to talk about food access, food sovereignty, and the flip side of food sovereignties, questions of food injustices, food apartheid, is that food, you can't separate it out from these other issues. It's so interconnected. Um, and so that's part of the reason that we collaborated with PPT on a couple of listening sessions because transportation is crucial to food access. But really, and people articulated this so strongly that you can't talk about food access and food sovereignty without talking about all of these other issues. So the structural and systemic racisms, violence and safety, access to healthcare, education, all of these things. And that's not to say that um, the problem is so huge that you'll never make a dent on food apartheid before you fix all of these other issues, but that you can't only look at food. And that, making a dent in transportation will also help sort of lift the tide of food access and, helping people to have more equitable access to healthcare and to education and to childcare and to employment will also help their food access. And so it almost makes the problem, even though it makes the problem seem even more of a wicked problem, it also gives you so many more inroads into how to access the problem. So you can talk only about food and say, oh, well, we need a bunch more grocery stores. But if people can't get there because they don't have access to the bus system or because the bus system isn't safe or it's not affordable, or they've been cutting routes in your neighborhood, then that grocery store doesn't matter. And if people's safety is in question, then getting to the grocery store is also going to be a big challenge. Um, People are making decisions whether or not to spend money on food or spend money on medication that they need every month. Then that additional grocery store is also not going to fix the problem. So, to me, that was really striking
Mhm.
because I think that's something that you can tell somebody, yeah, food is connected to everything else, but to really listen, like you were saying, Fawn, to really listen to folks and listen to their experiences of just how interconnected everything is, I think it's a really important takeaway.
Mhm. Yes, there are so many intersections.
Hmm.
We're talking about food apartheid, and just not food apartheid, but any of your social determinants of health or social justice issues, however you want to, whatever name you
Yeah,
want to. There's so many intersections there:
absolutely.
environmental justice to transportation to racism to white supremacy. I know when we were talking about solutions, people were talking about gardens, but they also brought up, lead in the soil,
Yeah.
another environmental hazard. So there's all of these intersections. And what I'm sharing now is one of the quotes. So throughout the report, Justine listed a lot of the quotes that people said to us, and we highlighted some of those. So I'm going to read this one out. It says, when my son was murdered, I started going to the city council meetings in Duquesne. And I was really disheartened at the fact that there was 10 of us there. And so you're upset that the grocery store is closed, or you're upset about that not going to city county meeting, then you have voiced your opinion about the closure and maybe change things. But how does the community even know that there's city county meetings? So that was another thing that came up in regards to not knowing when some of the council meetings were, how to get there, how to get access to them. So she was talking about her son was murdered. and that was like her first experience with wanting to go to a city council meeting, but
Really
also,
wanting to take action.
yeah, wanting to take
Make a difference.
action, but then realizing that there's no grocery store here. There's all these other issues that are happening literally at the same time. So it's really hard for us to live here. People always say we need to mobilize people. No, we need to educate people first. Let them know what's going on so they can make their mind up how they can participate. People like myself, I have privileged participation because this is my job. But
Mhm.
this ain't everybody's job. Everybody has, multiple jobs. So I got two myself, so it's hard to manage all of that. And we just wanted to kind of read out that quote so you all can see some of these intersections that we're highlighting right now. So before we bring PPT on, Justine, were there any solutions that kind of stood out to you? Because we did ask at every listening session after we talked about, some of the issues and the problems, we wanted to know what solutions that the community really wanted to focus on. So are there any things that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just kind of trying to jog my memory here. I've got the report right in front of me, but um, one of the biggest solutions that people seemed excited about was this idea of like the just the preponderance of vacant and empty land in the communities. And so kind of exploring this question of, well, who owns the empty land in the community? Um, how
Mhm.
can we get access to this land, to the empty lots? Um, People were talking about using these empty lots to grow food, um, and making making beautiful spaces, making spaces that grow food, sort of changing the way that they interact with the land and the environment around them.
Mhm.
Which in other places that I've worked and like places like Cleveland or Syracuse, people talk about that not just as growing food, but about building community, about engaging with youth, about getting outside, like all of these benefits that you have from sort of coming together around that process in particular. But folks in the listening sessions, talked about growing food, and then they also talked about like really wanting to build more civic engagement and to build, um, to really come together as a community, to take on this responsibility of like shaping their community. And so I think, for the future oriented solutions, I don't know if we landed on like a silver bullet, but I think that folks really landed on an excitement around taking action, around sharing ideas, around participation. Um, One person said, if I don't participate, I can't say anything. It starts right here. It's going to take people. It's going to be another meeting like this. It'll be other people, but sooner or later, that's what it's going to take. If you don't have this meeting right here, it ain't going to start nowhere. So really starting with these conversations and really starting with just recognizing that it takes people being engaged and, going to city council meetings, coming together, figuring out, can we get access to land? Figuring out, who owns that grocery store and how can we get them to change their hiring practices or whatever else it might be. But I think that excitement around kind of collectively shaping the future, whatever that might look like, I think it still remains to be seen. This was really just the beginning.
Mhm.
But that's kind of where I think we landed.
Mhm. Absolutely. The civic engagement, they really highlighted things, doing things together without the system.
Hmm.
Really was exciting for us because we're abolitionists and we try to push alternatives that are not connected to a system. So they brought up co-ops. They brought up growing their own food, community gardens, and we do have a community garden, but it's not really designed for growing food. It's more like growing trees and growing plants. They were specifically talking about growing their own food,
Yeah.
like a co-op style. And a lot of times in the hood, we already have these things that take place. Let's don't call it a co-op. People will be sharing food and,
Right.
share, be able to get access to that food. People do this all the time. We just don't have a name or a label with it, but you're always typically looking out for your folks. You have enough to eat. I really seen that a lot with COVID. Me and my family were dropping off supplies to each other. We started delivering supplies to elderly and disabled people. There was a lot of mutual aid that
Hmm.
was coming up. So there's a lot of opportunities there. People are excited about some of these solutions. So what TAG specifically is going to do is we're going to go after some grant funding to be able to help the community have a community garden where they can grow their own food. We're also going to be looking into some co-ops. There's a group in the Hill District here in Allegheny County, within the city of Pittsburgh, called Umoja Collective. Want to see if we
Mm,
can have them on here next month in August, for Black August, to talk about co-ops. I know they have something similar to that. Those are some of the things that people kind of brought up. And then, of course, having a damn grocery store, right? Not hard. It's not hard. It really isn't. I know people make it to be so very hard, but I can guarantee you that there are grocery stores, sometimes two or three, in white communities or communities where not communities of color. They're there. So it's not that hard
yeah.
to get a grocery store there. A lot of times the grocery stores that we do have, or the convenience stores, are overpriced. Sometimes the food is expired. That was a big one that came up simply from McKeesport, because we do have two grocery stores, well, three, and there's one in the downtown area that is not up to par. The Shop and Save down there, but I do know that they renovated it out. A lot of times the food is spoiled, it's expired. A lot of people did complain about that, so I did hear things improve slightly down there, but those are some of the issues that a lot of people run into when they're talking about food insecurity and food apartheid. Is people open stuff, but the food is not of quality. And then if you're going to be doing food banks and giving food out, like, give out what you would give out to your family. That's what
Hmm.
I always like to say. What would you and your family eat?
Yeah.
Don't give folks scraps because you think that's like all they need or all they want. Like, we don't want to live in some of these communities. It's
Right.
not our fault. Uh, White supremacy and systemic racism created the conditions that we live in, and we are just navigating it. So
Yeah.
thank you
And
so
abolitionism, I think it's so important. Abolitionism is not just about sort of dismantling these negative and like punitive systems that create unfreedom, but it's about building different systems. And so I think that abolitionism is a really great framework to start with because it's about looking towards what are the positive things that we want to bring into this conversation.
much.
So thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming on and coming up with this idea and reaching out to TAG and
Yeah,
Eric. I know that Rochelle with Black Women's Policy Table, they were also involved, and they're a group
definitely. Yeah, Rochelle, it's been amazing.
as well, and they were involved a lot in the beginning. So thank you for reaching out, and thank you for the work that you and your colleagues up at Penn State put in on the report, because that was not in the plan. That was something I was like, well, we need a report. If we're going to do it, we got to be able to give the community a report out.
Absolutely.
So no, I
Well,
appreciate you and all the work you put on this as well.
and I look forward to continuing to work with you on this.
Yes, as well.
Okay. Have a
Thank
good evening. Bye.
Right. So that report is on our website. I know it's in the chat at this point, but we'll be sharing that a lot. So check that out. And then we talked a lot about PPT, this Pittsburghers for Public Transit. And we talked a lot about the intersection for transportation and food apartheid. So now I'm going to call on Cheryl. Cheryl from Pittsburghers for Public Transit. Cheryl Stevens. She is the organizing manager over at Pittsburghers for Public Transit. So want to have Cheryl come on. I am also on the board for PPT, so I brag about PPT for a minute. So I've found about PPT my first year on city council. So I'm aging myself a bit. That was around 2010, 2011. And they were trying to, which they always cut the bus service over here, but they were trying to cut it at a dramatic level. So they reached out to me, and that was my first introduction with PPT. So since then, we've been kind of joined at the hip, and we've done a lot of work together in regards to access to transportation. So that's what PPT does. They just don't do it in Allegheny County. We have some connections in Westmoreland, really the state of Pennsylvania. We've been involved in several different things. Just in Harrisburg a few weeks ago to do some advocacy up there as well. So welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Fawn. It's really great to be here speaking with you.
Thanks for coming on here. Did you want to add anything about PPT? Did I leave anything out?
I think you summarized it pretty well. I mean, where PPT is a grassroots union of transit riders, transit workers, neighbors, just anyone that is passionate about getting affordable and accessible and expanded public transit, as Fawn said, not just in the city of Pittsburgh, but all across Allegheny County and even outside of Allegheny County to many different counties around Pennsylvania, because we believe that, access to public transportation is a human right and people have the right to mobility. And so we are here here to support the communities that have an idea of what they want their transportation to look like and feel like. And so we're just here to do what we can to support their efforts and be the people that show up.
Yes, and PPT definitely is the folks that show up. We'll be out here in these streets doing some amazing work. So we were doing the listening sessions on the food insecurity, one of the intersections that always came up. But we knew about this, but we really wanted to listen to the people. And they kept saying transportation, transportation, transportation. So we were already talking, me and you, about doing some things about transportation. So I said, let's bring PPT in to talk about transportation and to talk about, at that time, it was a campaign, but now it's a victory. So yay! And this is really exciting. I want to turn it over to Cheryl so Cheryl can update you on this amazing victory that we had.
Yes, it is an amazing victory that we did have, and we're gonna celebrate it for as long as we can. So this year, actually last month in June, Allegheny County had announced that they were going to transition their what they were calling the low income transit fare pilot program to a now currently permanent discounted fare program for households that receive SNAP benefits. So it's the first time that we have seen anything this expanded to low-income folks who, depend on public transit a lot to get around, to get to, as Fawn had said before, to grocery stores, to community centers, to healthcare centers. And it's really exciting to be able to see folks who, rely on the system the most finally see some relief from, having to worry about whether or not they have fare to use the bus. So it is really exciting that folks are now able to apply for the program and receive a 50% discount on all their transit fares throughout the county, on the bus, on the T, on the incline, anywhere that you take transit. So it is really exciting. It's huge, and it wouldn't have happened without the work of transit riders and the people who are most impacted by this issue of really costly transit fare.
Mm-hmm. And this particular program started as a pilot, correct?
Yes, it started as a pilot program that came about, as I was saying, from the work of transit riders who organized, who testified, who did research for years on it to see, what would happen if we didn't have to worry about the cost of transit fares.
Yes.
And I think that was why it was so successful, because this was led by the people who were experiencing, fare struggles. And so it did start as a pilot program where folks had half fares, fully free fares. And it was really great to see people, tell us that, like, hey, this is so amazing. Like, now I can take my kids to the basketball games or the museums and not have to like count out all the money to pay for their fares and their children's fares. So it was really great to see that happen. And now it's permanent.
Yes. And I know when we were doing our listening sessions, that program came up every listening session. There was at least one or two people there who had participated in that pilot program. And they pointed out, oh, actually now I can go to a better grocery store, or I can take my child to the park, or I can go swimming, or I can afford to go these places. And I don't think people understand when we talk about intersections and how all things are connected, even the violence, because if you can't afford to leave an area where a lot of vacant houses, a lot of vacant lots, you may live in a area surrounded by a lot of violence, and violence not just neighborhood, but I'm also talking about that direct and indirect violence, racism as well, and you can't get out of there. because you don't have no adequate transportation, and you wonder why people have mental health issues or why people are sometimes acting out violently. All things are connected. So I thought that was great that people were pointing out that, I'm in this program and now I'm able to get around because I have access and I can afford to ride the bus. So in your opinion, what makes transportation such a significant barrier here in Allegheny County?
Hmm, that's a very good question because I think of it as several different barriers from service to the infrastructure at bus stops to the cost of fares. But I think fares is definitely a significant barrier because we know in the US like 35% of um transit users had really struggled during the pandemic, and so many people spend over half their income on transit. Um, so I think in listening to riders, we know that a lot of people do rely on transit to get to where they need to go,
Mhm.
and that the cost sometimes can be prohibitive for people. And, as PPT, we don't want the cost of transit fare to block someone from living their full life and having a mobile life. Um, and what happens when transit riders don't have the money for transit, then they end up having to walk or to roll like very long distances to get to where they need to go. And, depending on where you live and your ability, that might be possible, but sometimes that can also be dangerous too, because you're at risk of getting hit by a driver on a road that doesn't have a sidewalk, or even good street lighting, or you have to go up or down a steep hill, and that can be very dangerous for people. So I think having the discounted fare program reduces one of the key barriers that limits people from being able to get around and have full lives. And so we hope with this program there's slightly less of a barrier, in SNAP households to get to work and to get to the grocery stores and to get to medical appointments and childcare and all the like great things that Allegheny County does have to offer. And people with low incomes also have the extra burden of having to budget like day by day. You don't have the luxury of being able to say, well, I'm going to go and I'll save a couple dollars and get the monthly pass, which is very expensive at full price. It's nearly $100. And when you're low income, you just don't have that money up front to then get the discount on the later end. So even if we have an amazing transit system that even ran, 24 hours a day, let's say, and there was twice as many bus stops, if people can't afford to, pay the transit fare, then they can't experience that transit system, even if it is really great.
Mhm. Is that one of the things that when you came to listening sessions that kind of stood out to you when the people were talking about some of the things that they've been through in regards to taking multiple buses or having to choose between medicine and food?
Hmm. I think actually one of the things that stood out to me in the listening sessions, and of course it makes sense, but when I was thinking about the example of people having to walk up and down steep hills, I know there was a woman that was talking about how I think it was she stopped taking the bus and started
Mhm.
trying to like pull together money for an Uber or asking a friend for a ride because she didn't feel safe walking down the hill, even just to get to the bus in the first place. And that was really, it was really sad to hear and also angering because it's like we have the system, like she is near a transit center where she can get different buses to go around McKeesport and into town. But because there's that one thing, the hill, the topography, the safety, like she just can't access that. And that just makes me think of, the intersectionality of transit. It's not just, like I say, the bus and the service, but it's the affordability. It's having the sidewalks, it's having the lighting, it's feeling safe in your community, even to go out and like get in the bus and like wait for it. So that was one thing that was really, that really stood out to me too. It was not just the affordability, but also just the feeling of safety and comfort to be able to even get to the service.
Yeah. And I know you had pointed out earlier in regards to transportation, some of the sidewalks. And that was another victory that I feel like we've had this year with, I call it Pat Transit. It's not called Pat Transit anymore though, y'all.
Now it's PRT now, which it gets confused with PPT, and people think
Right.
that we're PRT and
They
we're
do.
not. We're totally separate.
Yes, we're not
Trying
them.
to keep them accountable.
But I know
But
that
yeah.
we were beating the drum for them to do some structural changes in the Mon Valley. And some of that is underway now. And a lot of the structural changes were like sidewalks and I don't know what they call them. They were talking about bumping out some of them to make sure that it was safer for people, adding lights at some of the bus stops too. And this last year they rolled out some plans for that. So that's another big victory. I didn't know if you wanted to highlight that as well. Sure.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That is a big victory to start to see some of the plans come together and the feedback of what the community had wanted. In what PRT is calling the Homestead to McKeesport Transportation Plan. And I'm hoping really soon that they'll have some updates on the progress that they've been making towards the plans. But it is really great to see those improvements, especially in areas like Kennywood Boulevard and even on Lyle Boulevard, where there's folks that are driving very quickly, and as a pedestrian trying to get to and from bus stops safely, it's very scary. So I'm really glad to see them being listening to community's concerns around like traffic safety and just being able to get out and about in your community without having to worry about getting hit by a car, because that has happened a lot, and those deaths are entirely preventable.
Yes. That's happened a few times down on Loud in McKeesport specifically. And pedestrian safety, one of our chapter members, Courtney Tompkins lost her daughter in Atlanta to that. And she's working on, and we're supporting her working on several campaigns to bring awareness to pedestrian safety. That's a really, I don't think people pay attention to that a lot. They'll say, oh, it's just an accident. But specifically down on Loud Boulevard, down by that Eaton Park where there's a bus stop, there's been a lot of accidents of people getting hit by cars because cars are flying. They're flying there. So a lot of those transportation improvements were centered around that because PPT had the riders organized to go to these meetings and testify. And we've done protests and we've done rallies for years and years and years. So it was really good to see that start to come about. So how can people apply for the program? And then when we say SNAP, let me explain that a little bit. So SNAP is through the Department of Public Welfare. You have to apply for it as if you typically go and apply for any assistance. We call them SNAP benefits here in Allegheny County. You may call it something different somewhere else, maybe food stamps, and maybe whatever you call it. But you do have to be eligible for the program. You do have to be a SNAP household. What we mean by that is basically you have to receive SNAP benefits.
No, that's a very good explanation of SNAP. And the way that people can apply for the program is, so if they're an eligible SNAP user, which means they've been receiving SNAP for 3 months or more, they can go online and sign up for the program on the Allegheny Go website, which is discountedfares.alleghenycounty.us. And so there's a whole page that explains what you need for eligibility. And so they can go and apply. It's a little bit of what I call a two-part process. So there's the applying for the program through the county's website, discountedfares.alleghenycounty.us. Then once they're approved, what they'll want to do is download the Ready to Ride application on their smartphone. So if they have a smartphone, they can download the Ready to Ride app, which is through PRT. And that is how that's one way that they can purchase discounted fares, is through the app. So you can purchase it either by using a card, credit card, debit card, or if you are unbanked, what you can do is there's a list of locations. So if you put in your current zip code, it will show all of the places that are near you that you can go to and exchange cash, and then they will load the credit onto your Ready to Ride account so that you can then purchase the discounted fares that way. And that was really important to us because we know a lot of people are not banked, but that shouldn't be a barrier for anyone, receiving the discounted fares.
Mm-hmm.
And they can also do that at a Connect card machine, I believe, is also put in the cash and then have the code. Or if you're downtown, you can go to the service center and then pull up your account, and then you can give them the cash there, and they'll put that money onto your like virtual wallet.
Okay.
And we hope that next year, PRT has said that right now the program is digital, you have to have a smartphone to use it, but next year they will be rolling out Connect cards that people can use who are on SNAP to also get that discounted fare. So it will be accessible to everyone who qualifies for SNAP and is eligible to apply for the program. So I'm really looking forward to that next year.
And how does it work for households? So is it everyone's eligible or just one person?
So for households, so let's say that I was eligible for SNAP. I would go to the website, sign up, and on my profile, it would show actually everyone in my household, in my whole SNAP household. And I could select to add other people sort of to my household account, and they would also receive the same discounted fare benefit that I would. They would just need to have their own ready to ride account.
Okay.
So once they make their own account, they'll have access to the same half fare option.
Okay. So basically you all, that is whoever in the household applied for the SNAP benefits. So
Yes,
me
that's correct. As long as they don't currently receive a discounted pass through PRT, so such as the half fare disability pass, or like a Pitt University ID where they already receive free transit through their university.
okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So me and my husband are on this state's disability program. So if it was me, then I would go apply for myself and then check the box. Okay. Just so folks understand. And then do we know how long it takes them to get approved? Is it automatic?
They say at max it would be 48 hours. It seems to be happening within a day.
Okay.
So pretty quickly. It's that's really great. So they say if you don't see any movement within 48 hours, it's good to give the Department of Human Services a call just to check and see if there was anything, off about the application. But people have been receiving their discounted fare like access really quickly.
Okay, that's great. Now, if anybody has any issues applying, are they able to reach out to PPT?
They are able to reach out to us. I know we have a form on our website where people can tell us about issues. I would say if it's something immediate that they would want to contact the Department of Human Services to try to get that worked out. But especially if it's like a reoccurring issue, it would be really helpful for us to know, because we can help to work with the Department of Human Services or Pittsburgh Regional Transit to say, hey, a lot of people have come to us with this issue. Is there anything that we can do to fix this or make this easier for people to be able to use? That helps us to be able to go and like help make the case with transit riders to the two agencies.
So you have to apply, and we'll put all of these websites in a chat for you all, but you have to apply through the county's website. Usually takes 48 hours. If you encounter issues, if you need something immediate, contact Department of Human Services. But if you encounter any issues or anything good, we'll put this in our chat as well. So to let us know at PPT how your experience has been, how things are going, so that we can use that in our advocacy. Cool. Is there anything that you want to add in regards to anything we talked about today as we close out? Sure.
I would just say I'm really grateful for all the people that I got to work with along the way, and I'm very like happy and fortunate to be able to see this process come through, because I know like it's been years since this idea even turned into a campaign during the beginning of the COVID pandemic, where PRT was actually not collecting transit fares and having people board the bus at the rear, essentially, so not collecting fares. And then that was an opportunity for transit riders to say, hey, wait a minute, we've been asking for like zero fares for a long time. Now we can see what it looks like when people don't have to worry about having the money to afford fares. They can just get on the bus. So that actually helps stabilize PRT's ridership, which was really cool, because during the time of the pandemic, lots of people who had the option to either drive or take transit were either driving or they worked a job where they could work it from home. But there were lots of people who didn't have that option, like they had to ride the bus. Right. And it was good to have a little bit of relief with the transit fare, especially at such an uncertain time where a lot of people didn't have a stable employment. Was really scary. So it's great to see like how, I mean, having discounted fare really is a win for everyone. It's great for riders because then they can save money and put that money towards other things that they need. And it's great for the agency because they can see the ridership really increase and really see who their riders are. And it helps to keep the system afloat. So that's been really great to see. And I just loved all the people who I've gotten to meet who have told me the stories about how it's made a difference for them. So I'm just really appreciative that I get to be a part and help move this campaign forward. And I definitely want to say it's not over as PPT, which is a member of the Fair Fares Coalition. We are still committed to our initial goal of fully free fares, zero fares for all SNAP households in Allegheny County. So I like to say we're halfway there, but if folks want to help us get fully the way there, they can join the Fair Fares Coalition. We have a website for it, but I just want to make sure that this is not the end. This is just it's a midway victory until we get the full victory, but I'm still excited nonetheless. It's really great, and I hope to come back and report soon that we'll have fully free fares in a couple of years, and maybe in a year. We'll see.
Yeah. And great work to PPT. We are a membership organization, so if anybody wants to join PPT, please, we'll put that in the chat as well. We take on members all the time. It's a great organization. I want to shout out Laura, I want to shout out Dan, the entire board, all of the members of PPT are really be on the ground doing that grassroots work. I just love how the whole project here came together with the food insecurity, with the transportation and the listening sessions and the intersections. And I love how it all kind of came together because all things are literally connected. So thank you for coming on to the show, Cheryl. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Fawn. It was really great to be here and talk with you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, of course. So we will put everything in the chat here, and I will do my close out here. So you can stay on shore or not, it's up to you. But I also want to thank Theodore Roberts, Ted over at Penn State University, as well as the interns, Justine's interns that worked on this as well. When we talk about the report, like I said, that wasn't anything that they signed up for. That was something that TAAG was like, hey, we want to be able to report to our community the findings. So they were on board with the report. So thank you, Justine. Thank you, Ted. And thank you to Justine's interns that worked on that report as well. That'll be on our website. And we'll also put the links that Cheryl just discussed with the program. That is 50% discount you offer if you receive SNAP benefits. We'll put all that information in our chat and in our newsletter as well. So to kind of close out, I typically do like a TAAG overview of what we have going on in current or local events. So earlier I talked about the community champions. So we've been doing a lot of work on environmental justice. I think I mentioned that in the beginning as well. And we have a Get Out the Lead McKeesport campaign. So we are looking for community champions to be able to really champion that campaign, go to council meetings, and we talk about residents who live in McKeesport, help us at listening sessions, and just really do a lot of education in the community about what it looks like, how it affects us, and then how you can clean some of these things yourself. Community champions do receive a very small stipend, $250. And we also have organizations that we're asking to be community champions as well. But like anything else TAAG does, it's very principled. So we do ask people to fill out a form and have a recommendation from an actual community member. So we don't want orgs to just come on and say, hey, we'll be a champion to just make it look good or make it look like they're working with a Black organization. We want folks who are actually out there doing the work. So you want to reference from the community. Who do you know? Who have you been working with? As I always talk about, I feel like I've done this the last 5 podcasts at the end. I've talked about gentrification and how things will be showing up in the Mon Valley. And now I'm going to bring that to all small communities Because with advocacy typically comes a lot of people coming in wanting to help or wanting to do things. When people do that, what they should not do, say that twice, is erase the people who presently live there. I see this happening in the Mon Valley. So I'm going to say it at the end of all the podcasts and each opportunity I get. We should be demanding community benefits agreements or some form of shared power. When these people come into our neighborhoods, they should be hiring us. Uh, They should be working with us. They should not tell us what to do or how to do it. We should tell them because they work for us. If you truly want to come in and help us, then work with us. Don't look down on us or don't try to tell us what to do because you think that's what we should do. As I said earlier, living in these communities, people are advocating and responding out of necessity. So a lot of times it's not like a fun thing for us, right? It's not like, yay, like we're not happy about the shit. We're doing it because literally we have to. So that's how you should approach us when you come into our neighborhoods. I'm not just talking about the Mon Valley. I'm talking about all of these small communities everywhere where you have communities of color, where you have Black people, where you have marginalized groups. Don't tell us what we want. We already know. Work with us and give us the resources to do that. If you don't have a nonprofit, can you be somebody's fiscal sponsor? Can you hire somebody that lives there? Like Justine pointed out in our listening sessions, they talked about the grocery stores, but having nobody, they don't hire no one from the community. Grocery stores don't stay long in the area. They come, they go, or they think a dollar store is sustainable, and it is not. We need an actual grocery store. And I know it's possible because I see it in the white neighborhoods all the time. I see multiple grocery stores. I see multiple shopping areas. I see malls. Why can't we have all that shit? Because we deserve those things as well. And the report kind of points out the systemic inequality and systemic racism that kind of goes into that. But if you're going to come into these small communities, listen to the people. Another thing I wanted to mention was um, the election that is coming up in November. So TAAG will be doing a lot of voter engagement work. We are 501c3, so we do not support or endorse candidates, but we do voter education and voter empowerment work. We don't do voter blaming though. So we're not going to say, hey, it's up to us, up to Black people to say, no, we're not doing any of that. We're just saying, this is how you vote. This is some reasons why you might want to consider voting, but we're not telling anybody what to do. We did put on our website project, it's Project 2025, that I believe that is the Republican plan. So we put that on our website, so not our website, but on our social media page, so people can read about it and get your own education and make your own mind up. I think it's Project 2025. So you can be educated more about that. I think that is the plan coming out of the Trump administration. So make sure you read that, look at that, make your mind up for yourself. If you vote, if you don't vote, we're always going to promote voting because that is one way. It's not the only way, but it is one way for civic engagement. It is one way for you to be involved, especially voting locally. As a former city council person, I can tell you that every vote absolutely counts. One of my elections, I won by 3 votes. Yes, 1, 2, 3. So make sure that you're voting, make sure that you're civically involved. That was another thing that came out from the listening sessions was increased civic engagement, getting out there, getting involved and advocating. So thank you everyone for joining us today. This particular podcast will be on our Facebook page for a year. We leave them all up. If you want to follow TAAG on social media or stay up to date with what we have going on, you can follow us on Twitter. I'm sorry, it's X now, shit like that. But you can follow us on X. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram as well. Or you can sign up for our newsletter, which is right on our website. You scroll to the bottom, it says sign up for newsletter. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you again for Justine from Penn State Greater Allegheny, Ted as well, and Justine's interns for all the work they did on listening sessions as well as the report. Thank you to Eric Yule. He's a dedicated community leader from Duquesne, a former employee of Penn State Greater Allegheny who brought us in on this project. Thank you to Rochelle with the Black Women's Policy Table for their work they did on this as well. Thank you to PPT and Cheryl for coming on and talk about the intersections with transportation as well as the discounted fares program. So thank you all and have a good night. And we will see you all next month We'll be doing a podcast on Black August.